Thank you for joining us this week of Blue Table Talk. Today we're going to talk about Judith Butler's idea of gender performativity along with its new stance in feminism. Audre Lorde said, "The master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house." In this, she was discussing intersectionality and embracing differences among women to better the feminist movement. I believe that gender performativity and the deconstruction of gender binaries can also be used to deconstruct the master's house, in a sense of going away from this gender binary and this patriarchal society. Butler argues that gender is not biological, it's not ingrained at birth, but is a social construct that is continuously performed and renewed by people in general. I agree with this concept that gender is an act. Gender is performative, much like all self-expression. Where this theory has its place in the feminist movement is very important to me. Especially in America, society is dictated by this dichotomy of man versus woman, and in femininity being lesser. Therefore, women and men who display these feminine traits are also lesser. But if this idea of gender performativity becomes widespread and we acknowledge that gender is nothing but a performance, we may be able to dismantle some of the ideas that have created a strict heteronormative patriarchy, especially in America. Today the author joins me again to talk about queer theory in a little more depth, to talk about gender performativity and its role in the feminist movement. So Judith Butler talks about gender performativeness being something that's like renewed over and over again in daily life, and I believe that to the individual. But how is that different from any other like self-expression? Because I feel like everything that we do is performative. So how does this how do you think describing gender that way is productive in a way of breaking the gender binary? Because personally, I think the performativity is true, but as a theory, I think it's less practical in everyday society, in the sense that like the gender binary is so entrenched in the way we think that I don't see a way of getting away from the actual gender binary. It's like kind of deconstruction in a sense where we're trying to get away from the center, but it's just continuously talking about the center kind of just brings you back there.
I can understand that, but I don't think that the point of a theory is to debate how practical it is. I think it's to be like, if people view gender as performative, then it wouldn't really matter what area like society was trying to place people into, whether that was masculine or feminine, because a person could redesign it within a minute, perform one feminine aspect at 501, and then at 502 they could perform a masculine, whether it be like outward performance or like inward thing, because everything I do think is gendered, and like we can't change that things have been gendered, unfortunately, now that we live in this society. So I think that the best way to have a theory like this function within society is to just use the fact that we know that things are gendered, but then acknowledge when someone is going beyond the whatever grasp of such a gender is. Like we notice whenever somebody bends a gender, or breaks a gender, is gender fluid, or like is non-binary, like you notice it. So I think that that's a start, acknowledging that this is something that is deviating from the gender binary.
So also, how would so I feel like there's a big importance on heteronormativity in the whole idea of gender binary. So like how does sexuality play into like the non-gender binary, in a sense of like typically is like in like the way we view sex, the way we view relationships in our society is a man and a woman is like normal.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not the way it is, but in terms of like statistically, like yes, it is like a biological man typically. Like the majority of people are heterosexual. Yeah. Is that in sense like just, I feel like that is a huge part of heteronormativity, in that people view this as like there has to be a man and a woman woman because that is normal for like relationships, like in a relationship type of way.
Yeah.
And I think the way we've gendered has, I mean, historically, obviously, it's been, I feel like a lot of sexism has been around like the family. So the woman has her duties and man has, and like getting away from that binary. But how could we ever completely get away from that, in a sense that it is usually going to be a man and a woman in a relationship? You know what I mean? I feel like that's a big constraint of a non-gender binary.
Yeah, I feel like having a man and a woman in a relationship, if it was like just a heteronormative relationship, I don't know if I would say that itself is like reinforcing a gender binary, depending on the way the relationship functions. I think if the man were to function as I'm the breadwinner and I get to do whatever I want for my career and for myself, and then the woman is constrained to the home and like is not allowed to follow her passions or ambitions, and must stay centralized to like children and childbearing and nurturing and stuff like that. I think that if the relationship functioned in that dichotomy, then it's not not very productive for gender theory or like viewing gender as performative, because you're constraining people to continuously perform something just based on like a label you're giving them. And I think that a big point of like gender bending or like gender fluidity is that you're not really, your label is fluid. Like there is no strict thing that you're falling into. But I think that it's having this idea of what a husband and what a wife does in relation to each other is just like a societal construct, and that because we've seen it in history for so long that people are like, I can't really break it now, or like they have it ingrained that this is what they should do because they are a woman and this is what a woman does in the house when she's married.
Yeah, but I feel like because gender norms and gender identity are so entrenched in society, it's hard to say whether or not like me as a woman, like I perform femininity because that's just who I am and that's my performance, or it's more society has constructed me in this way. So yeah, I would say gender is a social construct, but is there really a way to break that construct? In the same way that race is a social construct, but we're never going to escape like race.
Yeah. That I feel like is a difficult thing to do. I think the more people like come in contact or study or like interact with people in the world,
Breaking the academic theory versus like exposing it to everyone instead of just saying like this, because like queer theory isn't known to most, like a lot of people wouldn't say, like when they hear queer theory they don't know like exactly what it is or what people are saying when they say that.
Yeah, and I think people also think that like queer theory only like relates like that breaking the gender binary, like if you do that you must not be like cisgendered, but like you can be both. Like you can, because it's performative, it doesn't have to just have like whoever you're attracted to, like whatever your sexuality is, you can break a gender and not have it affect that. And I feel like that's probably a misconception for people also.
I think in exposing, and the only way that this theory would ever, that gender would be broken, in a sense, that gender binary would be broken, is if we were able to completely, expose the misconceptions, but to an extent that I don't feel in our society that would be a possibility, since it is so socially constructed. And there's a lot of couples nowadays who are raising their kids without a gender, and I am interested to see how that pertains. Obviously you can't have a kid completely taken away from society, so you still don't really know, but there is something to say about raising kids that way and seeing how that does affect the way that they view their gender and because I think there is some sort of gender kind of that you are, in the sense of not you're this gender or that gender, but you create, you perform these acts and all that it is what we label you as, and without that label, what do you label yourself as? But at the end of the day, once these kids grow up, they're gonna put a label on themselves because that's what we're telling them to do. Yeah. So I think that it's not necessarily ever going to be a gender binary breaking, but us viewing the gender binary as more of like fluid space where it's not like we don't adhere to strict gender norms, and that if that is managed, that will help like the feminist movement in a sense where femininity is no longer associated with negative or less than. And at the same time, I think if we incorporate these theories in the feminist movement, quote unquote, for women, that it will only help the LGBTQ community because, you know, misogyny is so entrenched in why we hate, you know, heterosexuality or homosexuality, in a sense that especially gay men are treated less than because they're not masculine enough. So I think breaking the binary is more of a unattainable goal in a sense, but structuring our society in a way that we understand that gender is performative.
Yeah. I think that completely having no binary at all, I think, is too hard a thing at this point in time to have people accept or like understand. But I think that the best way for society to function towards the idea of understanding that gender is performative or like anything within that realm, whatever anything else playing into people's lives is around there, is like to understand, I don't know, like to reinforce the gender binary. But the more you believe in the gender binary, the more you can see when someone breaks it. And I think that seeing someone break it and seeing so many people in society break it is what is going to help, like, the LGBT community or, like, women in general, like, understanding that, oh, I thought that this, what it means to be a woman, I thought this concept was so strong, but I'm seeing 5 billion people in the world break what it means to be a woman or do something as a man that a woman would do, and, like, or vice versa, like, for both ends of the spectrum for that. So I think in a way that reinforcing the gender binary, it actually could help break it.
Makes sense. I also, as gender is performative, a big question I have on how breaking it is seen in like literature and media. So like movies, there's not a lot of gender. It's very gendered. I feel like and it's a little less so now, but in the sense that like women typically have like these personas and men have these personas, and every movie has a man star, you know, action movies. If it's not a man, then it gets a lot of heat, like Ghostbusters with women,
Captain Marvel.
Yeah, Captain Marvel, all these movies without this strong masculine man get a lot of heat. But how does literature and, you know, media, whatever, get away from, like, enhance the idea of performativity instead of adhering to, because I mean it's all about consumption, it's all about what people want to read.
Yeah.
How do they not reinforce that, even if their character, how do they say that their character is performing versus, because it's, how does a reader know or a viewer know that it's performative in a sense?
That's an interesting thing to look at. In terms of film, I think that the way that they construct gender or perform gender is a lot more tailored to audiences, and like I don't think you can view that outside of like a capitalist the way it functions. I think now in society, like with Captain Marvel coming out and Wonder Woman doing so well at the box office, and honestly, I guess those are people love Black Widow. People right now
see this right now.
Yeah, they want to see strong female leads. There's a market for it, unfortunately. So whether the people that are making the films actually believe that these women are strong, whether just because they're, I also don't know if these films are trying to say if these women are strong just because they're women or if they're strong because they're able to do things that a man could do.
So that's what like the gender, but this comes back to the gender bending. Is it reinforcing or deconstructing the gender?
Yeah. I don't know if it's deconstructing or reinforcing. I think honestly, I feel like that is probably tied to the topic of like the author and who is making the film and who's watching it, because I, as a viewer who has seen Wonder Woman and wants to see Captain Marvel, I think that I will view that as a woman being a woman, but being a woman is she can do whatever she wants. Like she's able to be as strong as a man or faster than a man, higher, further, faster, whatever her thing is. But I think that other people that watch it will just see that this woman is clearly trying to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
And that in that way, the reinforcing the gender binary in that way is not doing a good job of like empowering women or like making that these distinct things. It focuses more on like the one character. Like people will think, oh, Captain Marvel or Wonder Woman is able to break it, but not society as a whole.
But
just this one person.
As more of these movies come out, and since there is such a big, do we think this will become normalized in a sense that the same way like Ocean's 8 and Ghostbusters, they're like, oh, they're just women because they want to just put women.
Yeah.
You know, but if we continue it, obviously there's a market, make these movies, do you think that the thought process of these people who say these things will change to a sense that it's like the societies will begin to not view the gender binary as much, not view it as them gender bending because it's done so often that now this is kind of a norm and women can do this. Women can be these roles. Women are these roles.
Yeah, I think that, for instance, if we were to go back to the beginning of time and say that women and men were shown equally in these strong roles as like superheroes, whether they're in comics or literature or on the screen or in music, whatever, I think that if they were shown in the same amount of like screen time or like page length or like monetary value, whatever it is, I think that people would not have these strict, like this dichotomy of whatever gender is would be dismantled from the very beginning.
Sure.
But I think that the more films or like movies or songs or whatever else that women make that are like empowering women or showing that like women can do anything that a man could do and they're actually showing it, I think that as that increases, this hesitancy towards understanding that a woman can perform aspects of them that are gendered as masculine, I think that would reduce the amount of it.
Okay, that makes sense. I think continuously putting these films out there,
continuously and consistently,
these products out there with the right, and I do believe that it is what you said about the author in a sense that, you know, Wonder Woman, wasn't she directed by a woman?
Directed by a woman, screenplay
I think
was written
that
by a man.
Because women are able to understand this binary, I think, a little bit more than men, and because it's been imposed upon them, that they know kind of how to break it in a sense a little better.
I think that they understand how to, for instance, I'm sure, I don't know who directed it, maybe Patty Jenkins?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
It's Patty something.
I think it was her. But I'm sure she's a woman in a strong position in Hollywood, and she obviously is displaying, she's in a role that most men have as like producers or directors or whatever. And as a woman in like a power role, and as the actress who plays Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, like she's obviously a woman put in a position of power, and they're using that for a good thing. But I think that they understand that this fluidity of like women's strength or like women's agency or presence, and that they can show that to people who might not understand that these women aren't just like trying to be men. They're just women that are strong or whatever, intelligent.
And I think that is more entrenched in the works as they are women, obviously, versus like a man saying that this woman is performing a certain way or whatever. I think that having women be more present in their own stories is what's gonna help like make this a not, oh, like Captain Marvel was a girl, and more of a, oh yeah, of course, like this is the movies, like women can be superheroes, women can do whatever. And I think that is important in moving forward with like, especially film and TV, in the gender performative aspect of it.
Yeah, I think it would be important to just say like, oh, Captain Marvel is a superhero, period.
Exactly.
Not that she's a woman who can also be a superhero, just that she's a superhero, and with that, in that category there's women and men.
But I think it displays also where we're at as a society, in that this is like a long road. Like, yes, the series here, yes, it's true, like we can agree all day long that gender is performative, but it seems like getting society on board, like every movement, is going to take a while.
Yeah. Forever. Maybe dead. It never actually happened.
Yes. we don't